Chambers of the Occult may contain content that might not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah,
Cool.
you sound fine.
Hi, welcome back, y'all.
That's how we're starting it.
Yeah, no one's freezing.
Yeah, no one's freezing, but now we're like not making sure we sound fine before we start the episode.
Yeah, we're just bringing you like
W-
raw content. Yeah,
Yeah, unedited.
exactly.
Maybe a little bit of editing
Here and there,
here and there.
The worst
yeah.
parts are you won't hear them.
Yeah, we've definitely had to cut some stuff out. Don't worry, it's nothing like crazy. It's just like addresses and phone numbers and stuff that we probably
Yeah, not
shouldn't
ours.
have said. Not but What you guys didn't see it, but one time, part of a case there was a phone number like for something, and I actually called the phone number on recording. But we realized that probably was not a good thing.
It also didn't go
So
to
we cut it
the
out.
right person anymore.
No, it didn't go to the person that it said it would belong to, but it went to an actual establishment, an actual business. So like a lady answered. It was like 8 p.m. She was like, "Hello, this is the so and so."
It
I was
was
like, "Oh."
later
and I
because it
hung
was
up.
like in the East Coast or something.
It was probably like 8 or 9 p.m.
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
I'm Jay.
Chambers of the Occult Lore. Hello, that's Jay. I'm Kai.
I was about to say I'm Kai. No, I'm not.
No, you're not.
I'm a liar.
Oh, man.
Episode 24.
Yeah.
2 dozens.
Isn't this the beauty of not having like scripted episodes or scripted starts or anything like that?
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
I think it's great. People get to actually see who we are rather than just hear words.
Yeah.
Now, real quick before we start, I do have an update. I know that we
Okay.
just saw each other last night, but like I have a life update already.
Okay.
So remember how we grabbed some coffee before D&D?
Yeah.
Innocent enough, we're just grabbing coffee before like getting caffeinated before we roll some dice.
Yeah.
So it's not your fault, it's my fault that I completely forgot that I had finished a Celsius right before we went to grab coffee.
Oh.
So while I was doing some shopping, I was just drinking a Celsius, and it's like, cool, let's go grab some coffee. So this morning, I walked to my car, and what do I see staring back at me from the cup holder? Celsius. It was just there like, hey, like, do you regret having me yet? Because I could not sleep last night.
Damn.
Like, yeah, we had like a large coffee, but that's normally fine with me. Celsius and coffee late at night, not a good combination.
Is not a good combination.
No.
Right. That's just too much.
Yeah, no.
What's
So
going
the
on?
whole Callum trying to break a window, that was like
It was caffeine induced.
that was like prophecy inducing, because turns out
Okay.
that caffeine, a double overdose of caffeine, it basically equals real life wild magic surges, because I could not sleep.
All right.
I kept tossing and turning, and then this morning I got to work, and surprise, surprise, everything is moving at this like pace of molasses, just super slow. Nothing's going as it's meant to go, and then at some point, like my fingers just start like tingling, and I'm like, that's not good.
So that's how work went today for you.
Yeah, no, it was really long because caffeine. So because I couldn't help myself, I put my symptoms into ChatGPT to see what was happening to me.
Okay. Did it say you were gonna die?
No, well,
Well, huh?
I said that my fingers had been tingling, my brain felt like static, and like there was heartburn, which was just like a little bonus thing. thrown in there.
Diabetes,
Now this was just like, hey, these are my
low blood
symptoms.
sugar.
What is happening?
Yeah.
Um, and I got roasted harder than that light roast last night. Um, because let me tell you what it
Huh?
said. It said, "Sounds like you're running on pure adrenaline and questionable life choices. You're one chaotic dance move away from unlocking a new plane of existence." I just wanted to know if this was normal after being over caffeinated and sleep deprived.
Bravo, Chat
And I was
GPT.
like,
Bravo.
thanks for calling me out, but I just needed to know that I'm not dying. Um,
I mean, I think it gave you your answers, so.
it did. So next time, um, I will just verify with me that I haven't double caffeinated before coffee, or let's just go to like a
Will
tea
do.
shop.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So it wasn't until like probably like 1:30 or 2 that my fingers finally stopped tingling. Yeah. Came home, took a
Okay.
nap, and now I'm good to go. But yeah,
Well,
life
I'm glad
updates.
you're fine now. Yeah, glad you're fine now. Uh, and not caffeine induced, hopefully.
No,
Who
no.
knows?
I mean, if like something crazy comes out of my mouth, I'll blame the caffeine.
To some extent. Because, I'm kind of scared now.
No, no,
Thinking about it.
fair. I mean,
Like, you can't just say anything and then blame it on the caffeine, right? So.
hey, I can say anything and blame it on the caffeine. Is that gonna be reasonable? Like reasonable? Is that gonna be acceptable? English is hard.
I guess.
Anyway, Kai, what's up? What's happening? What's crack-a-lacking?
I don't know anymore. Uh, we're recording a podcast. That is what's crack-a-lacking.
Yeah.
Hello, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah.
Don't even know how to transition from here back to the case.
No, not at all.
No. I was just like, do I text you what's
Okay.
happening or do I tell you in the podcast? And I'm like, I'll tell you and the listeners what's happening.
I think you telling me was a good call. Yeah.
But yeah,
All
what
right.
do you have for us?
Well,
Hopefully not
Yeah,
caffeine
I'm gonna
induced.
get us started off. With a true crime case because we always start our podcast with a true crime case.
Yes.
So it'd be kind of weird if I didn't. Unless it was like campfire stories, which, aren't cases. If you haven't listened to campfire stories, please do. We love recording those. They're fun. And we would love it if you loved it too.
Yeah. What you think about them. Because so far let us know. We'll
Mm-hmm.
make more if you request them.
All right.
Take us
So
away.
let's get started, shall we? Now, as is customary chambers of the occult fashion, I have a question for you.
Ooh.
What do you think about soldiers? Like in the army?
Oh, okay. Thank you for your service. I think that's all I really have to say. I mean, I know it
Fair.
takes a lot of work, a lot of commitment. It's a huge commitment. So once again, thank you for your service.
Yeah. I guess, like, what kind of person comes to mind, in a way? Who do you imagine?
The typical cis white male.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, maybe there's some generalizations.
Yeah. I mean, well, you
some
said what
stereotypes for sure.
That's definitely like the first one that pops in my head. There's a bunch, but like
No, yeah, for me as well. I get it. Like, rough around the edges, cough cough, white men. As previously mentioned. Maybe something like that, right?
Yeah.
But besides all of that, do you generally regard people in the military to be like honorable or trustworthy?
Normally, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Normally, there's something that inherently makes you like trust them a little bit more than the average person.
I agree. or like at least for the ones who like have literally fought in combat zones, then yeah, I have at least some respect for them,
Yeah.
right? Like, how could you not? Um, Especially because my dad was in the Navy. My cousin was in the Navy. I dated a girl who was in the Navy. I think I've talked to you
Yeah.
about
You
her,
have.
mentioned her briefly.
Uh-huh.
All Navy. That's kind of weird. They're all anyway. I almost joined the Navy, but I didn't because I realized I didn't want to live on a ship for a long time, and then I considered joining the Coast Guard, but then
Okay.
I realized I don't want a military lifestyle.
Yeah. There
Anyway,
was were you
yeah,
tried were you I don't know how to like word it, but like were you recruit like were they tried to recruit you like well no cuz like you had a weird high school experience cuz in my high school like at some point like there was like marines there and they were just like questioning people and they're like
same. Actually, I
okay
did actually have a Marine try to talk to me one time, but I was like, I don't want to join the Marines, man.
yeah
Like, sorry, you can get out of here.
no I the fastest
Yeah.
and easiest way to get them to be like oh was like yeah what are you thinking of studying and I was like theater and they're like oh yeah
Like,
like not
yeah, we're
science
not
not math not
gonna
like engineering I was like nope
theater.
yeah and yeah
Anyway,
keep going
I do have respect for people that serve, right? Thank you for your service. If anyone's watching who's in the military, thank you for your service. We're not trying to shit on you. Um, However, I hope you recognize that you are going to be stereotyped and you're with a lot of stereotypical people. I'm sorry.
yeah you're also
Anyway,
not going to be treated the best
yeah.
which is
So
unfortunate
yeah. But anyway, I do have respect for people that serve. Um, Not all of them, though, right?
I'm
Not the bad
assuming
ones.
there is a reason you're saying this.
Yeah, not the bad ones. Not the ones that commit crimes so heinous, it's almost inconceivable that they were even considered honorable at some point.
Um,
Um, Not the ones that murder and rape so many innocent people. Not Israel Keys.
the name is very familiar.
So Keys was a serial killer. I'll get right into it.
Okay.
Among many other things. He was active from the late 1990s to February of 2012. It's a long time.
Yeah.
But before this, he was an army soldier. So, what led him up to this point, right? Now, Keyes was born on January 7th, 1978, in Richmond, Utah. He was the second of 10 children. The second of. That's a lot.
That's a lot. And my dad comes
So
from a
his
big
parents
family. That's a lot.
were Heidi and John Keyes. So his parents were. And I guess the arm wasn't all too unfamiliar to him. His parents were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That's
So
yep.
they were Mormons. They were pretty devout Mormons from what I've gathered as well.
I mean, is there any other kind?
This is true. Maybe some more intense than others because I have some family members that are Mormons and they're really not too bad. But
Okay.
anyway,
at least his
perhaps
family was.
At least his family, yeah.
Okay.
But maybe Mormonism was actually the least intense denomination that Keyes and his 9 other siblings were subjected to. They were all homeschooled until 1983, and then the family moved to Colville, Washington. But here's the kicker. They were alone, isolated from any society. They didn't even have electricity or running water in the one-room cabin they all shared on the remote plot of land that they purchased.
So a family of 12.
Washington. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I
in
can
a
see why there would
one-room
be issues.
cabin. hmm The only interaction with society was a church in Colville called the Ark, A-R-K.
Okay.
But this wasn't Mormonism. It it pretty much was a cult. A white supremacist Christian cult, essentially.
Okay.
Who would have guessed that that's what they transitioned to, right? Whatever. I don't know. In later interviews, Keyes actually described it as an Amish-like environment. No outside
Got it.
interaction, no technology. Like it was very like country living, solitude type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, they also went to another church during that time. Don't have the name of that, couldn't find it. But this one was, of course, also racist. Spreading doctrine that said it was a sin to marry anyone of a different race,
Okay.
and that the Anglo-Saxons were to rule over all of the other inferior races.
So you get to
Um,
join the cult or you get to join the racists.
Yeah, and then he was a part of both. So, that's
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So his adolescence was like being part of a militia, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the army called to him.
Yeah, that could
Um
make sense.
mhm. Do you think this is all his parents doing, though? All the environment that he was subjected to, it, changed him. Nature versus
I
nurture
would
and all of that.
say
Um,
no, because he was 1 out of 10.
Good. I agree, because no, I am not exonerating him by telling all of this.
Hmm.
Because this is where his murderous tendencies began to show, right? They lived in solitude, alone, one room cabin, no electricity, no water. So, how'd they get their food? They had
Hunting?
to hunt for it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
hmm The kids sometimes had to hunt for their own food, a lot of the time, actually. Though Keyes admitted that it actually became a hobby for him to hunt, quote, anything with a heartbeat, end quote.
Okay. I don't like where this is going.
Even going as far as skinning animals alive in the process.
Okay.
Deer, rabbit.
This is a weird, morbid fact that I learned that if, like, you were to be skinned alive, you would die from hypothermia before you lose enough blood.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, just, yeah. Morbid fact.
Okay, cool. Um, I lost my doc. Where is it? All right. So, yeah. He would skin animals alive in the process, like I mentioned. He would shoot at people's houses with his BB gun. He would start fires in the woods. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. So right off the
These
bat, he
things.
was never the well-behaved kid. Was he? He was the second child, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He was second of the 10.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, Now Keyes became very antisocial, right? Because of how ostracized he felt from everyone else around him, which duh, of course you're going to feel that way, bro. You're like murdering shit and skinning animals alive and people are scared of you. Like they don't like you because of
Yeah.
this. Um yeah, and he especially realized this, like how ostracized he felt. Um when one day he tied a cat to a tree
Okay, we're back to the
and
animals.
tortured it, shooting it with a revolver, a 22 revolver, goring it. The cat ran around the tree. It was described as having crashed into it, whatnot, and eventually succumbing to the wounds.
Hmm.
but a daughter and son, so two children of a personal friend of the Keys family, were actually there to witness it, and everyone ran away from him when they saw this because who
That's
wouldn't, right?
violent.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
There's animal cruelty when like he would have kicked an animal, and then like this is a completely different level of animal cruelty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, by the time Keys was a teenager, the family had moved again to Smyrna, Maine, Smyrna.
Okay.
Um, from what I gather, they really only lived there for a while. Like Keys himself, Israel. He probably lived there for maybe a year or so. I'm not sure. Um, but Keys and his siblings, they felt so much religious guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Living in this strict family, they were constantly documenting their sins in journals and whatnot,
Oh, okay.
stuff like that. Um, but Keys was sick of it, right?
Yeah, he wanted something
So,
else.
yeah,
He-
in his late teens, somewhere around, I believe, 17 or 18, around 17, I believe, he entirely renounced religion. He declared himself an atheist, which his parents, of course, did not like.
Of course, if
Um,
they're Mormons, they're not going to be okay with
mm-hmm,
any of their children leaving at any point for any reason.
mm-hmm. No, exactly. And so they evicted him. They shunned him. They instructed all of his siblings to never have contact with him ever
That's
again.
how it goes. They're so family oriented
Yeah.
that, yeah, it's just how it goes.
Mm-hmm. So this was sometime around late 1997, early 1998, somewhere around there, I
Okay.
believe. Yeah. So, so Keys is out on his own now, right? He was shunned. He was gone, kicked out. Um, he didn't really know what to do or where to go. From what I researched, he traveled around a bit.
Hmm.
He went kind of all across the country. Like they were in Maine, but he went back to the West Coast where he grew up at. Oregon, Washington, traveled through those areas. He eventually left to go to New York more permanently.
So he did
And
a bit of traveling, yeah.
yeah. And New York is where he enlisted into the military.
Ah, okay.
So it was right after he got kicked out, essentially. It was July 9th, 1998, is when Keys once again, although this time willingly, signed himself over
Yeah.
to a militia like living. Um, it
Uh,
probably felt right. It was something that made sense to him
I was
in
gonna
a
say it was
way.
either one of two things. Either it's something he would be comfortable with because this is what I know, or something he would be tired of because this is all I know. Yeah.
Hmm. Maybe it was a bit of both, but it was the only option,
Yeah.
something like that.
And
Now,
how old was he at the time, do you know?
um, he was he was 19.
Okay.
He was 19. Um, yeah, so he joined the military. He got in. Keys actually kind of excelled, which is really fucking scary because of what we know about his
Yep.
past.
The whole
They
going
didn't know that, of
hunting, the
course, right?
whole
But
yeah.
yeah. So, that's pretty insane, I would say. He was actually on track to become an army ranger. Like he got
So
through the
he was
preliminary
doing
tests
really
and
well.
everything.
He
So he
was
was, yes, did really
which
well. He was well respected, all that jazz.
if that's where the story ended, great. But we know that's not where it ends. Uh
No. Um yeah, he was doing really good. He got stationed all over. He actually was back in Washington at some point at one of the forts there, in Texas, one of the forts there. He also spent some time in Egypt and
oh,
overseas a
okay.
bit. Um, Apparently, he was in like in Egypt or something. He was in like on the mortar team, I believe, and he just met a lot of people. But during his time in the military, lots of fellow soldiers described him as being very reserved and just being keeping to himself, really the quiet, determined type,
Hmm.
is what it seems like. Um, so he spent his time in the military. Eventually, Keyes was honorably discharged in 2001.
Do we know the
He was
reason?
given. I think it was just time for him
Okay.
to. Uh, I think he just wanted to leave. His 4 years was up because typically it's like a 3 or 4 year.
Okay. So it
Um,
wasn't like anything bad. It was just his time.
so an honorable discharge is just the standard good. You're leaving the
Yeah. Yeah.
military. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So nothing bad happened at
Okay.
all. He was given an honorable discharge. He was also given an Army Achievement Medal for his time spent as a gunner,
Okay.
which was and then he moved to Nea Bay, Washington. So he went back to Washington, back to the West
Hmm.
Coast. Um, I mentioned earlier how I am definitely not exonerating Keyes from his crimes,
No.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll get into those in just a second. For now, I just wanted to paint a better picture of who he was. You know, someone that was almost trustworthy for a time, someone you could almost feel bad for because of the way that he grew up. I also mentioned earlier how he became active in his murder and whatnot after he left the military.
Hmm.
Um, well, I guess that kind of was a lie because his first victim
No.
was sometime in the summer of 1997 or summer of 1998 before he joined the military.
Yeah. Oh.
Now, this was back in Oregon. I'm not entirely sure why he was in Oregon at the time because I don't think he and his family were living there.
Was it when he was traveling?
N- ah, Actually, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was during his traveling
Before
time.
he came
That
back to
makes a
New
lot of
York to
sense. Yeah,
enlist. Okay.
to go. Yeah, so he was traveling. He was in Oregon. He was at the Deschutes River. Just a river like somewhat in the woods type of thing where people would hang out sometimes. And at this time, it was a teenage girl and her group of friends. They were going tubing down the river, like water tubing.
Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
those.
I've seen it.
Pretty fun, actually. Lo and behold, Keyes was stalking them from just beyond the tree line before what he described as, quote, very violently sexually assaulting, end quote, the girl.
No.
She was believed to be between 14 and 18 at the time.
Oof. I was gonna ask
And
about
he
her
was-
age.
And Keyes was about 18
Okay.
at the time. 17, 18, somewhere around there. He actually held her at knife point. Originally, he wanted to perform a satanic ritual that involved murdering her because, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, after he denounced religion and became an atheist,
Yeah.
he actually became a Satanist for a time.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave the Mormon church. I'm gonna become an atheist, and now I'm a Satanist.
Yes. Complete 180.
This man.
But yeah, he needed to murder her for a satanic ritual, but he couldn't do it. He said, quote, I was too timid. I wasn't violent enough, end quote.
If you're holding
So he
someone
let
at
her go.
gunpoint, I think you're violent enough.
Keyes then said, he told investigators, there's lots of his interviews online, actually, which are pretty cool to see. But Keyes told investigators, quote, I made up my mind that I was never going to let that happen again, end quote. Spoiler, it did. It did happen again.
Okay.
Let me pull this over. So, that was his first crime, in a way. Like, of course, it wasn't a murder, which is good, but it was still a very
It
violent
was still assaulting
crime.
someone, nonetheless.
Yes, very violent crime, and that is not
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
So, um, sorry, let me get this situated.
you're fine.
So he, that first victim happens, and then he joins the military, and for the next 3, almost 4 years, he really, he just spends his time being a upstanding soldier and whatnot. Fuck this guy. Anyway,
So at least that we're aware of that incident happened, and then 4 years, and then nothing happened those 4 years until after he was discharged, honorably discharged.
no murders.
Okay.
Later on, he did actually confess that um, during his time in the army, actually, while he was in Egypt, he did try to rape a sex worker and also a college student that he met while he was in Israel, actually,
Hmm.
visiting there. So he did try to commit crimes.
Not surprising. Not okay.
Yeah, not surprising at all.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, he was discharged in 2001, and that's when he is believed to really begin his killings, his murders. Um, he has three confessed victims, three convicted,
Okay.
convicted for three different murders. Um, so the three that we have here are a 49-year-old man named William Bill Scott Courier and a 55-year-old woman named Lorraine Courier. So, husband and wife. Old husband and wife. Now, his third confessed and convicted victim, it was an 18-year-old girl named Samantha Koenig. Um, Now, the first murder of the husband and wife was in Vermont. It was in Essex, Vermont. Um, it happened on the night of June 8th, 2011.
Oh wow.
But yeah, 2011. And then the second confessed. So
Yeah.
the third girl, Samantha, the 18-year-old, that happened in Anchorage, Alaska. Um,
What was this
and
man
he
doing in
initially
Alaska?
kidnapped her in 2012. And that's the thing, right? Two completely different profiles, two completely different
Yeah.
locations. Well, that's because he just targeted random people. There was no method to his
He
madness.
just
There
threw a
was
dart on the map and just said, That's where I'm going."
exactly. He knew that it would help him avoid detection, and it was never just like out of the blue. It was never a random, impulsive thing. He always planned for months before he wanted to commit his
That's
crime,
scary.
and then he would just find that random person who really fit in. A lot of the time, he would like hide at campgrounds and like in the woods, other isolated areas. Um, and his preferred method to kill was actually not using guns, right? He was in the army. He was a soldier. You'd think he'd like to shoot people. Mm-mm. That's not what it was. It was strangulation.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking either.
What did you think?
I was thinking like knife.
That's valid. That is valid as well, actually.
Because you did talk
Um,
about the whole skinning of an animal and then like holding a girl at gun like knife point. So that's
yeah,
kind of where I thought it was going, but not
this
strangulation.
is true. Yeah, he. The reason he said it is because he really didn't care about like the victim and he didn't really want to leave a mess type of thing. The only thing that mattered was the pleasure that he got from witnessing his victims
Struggle.
struggle, lose
Uh
consciousness, and actively taking their breath
yeah.
away. Um, so he chose victims at random, essentially.
Hmm. Now, those were the only three that he was convicted for, right?
Yes,
Okay. Was there
yes.
more that
Um,
they suspected him of?
yes, and I'll get into that
Okay,
too a bit.
sounds
But
good.
first, I do want to. But the reason they were able to learn about this in the first place, and the reason why they think that there's more, lots more that he's suspected of, is because they were able to catch him at all. So the murder of Samantha Koenig, the 18-year-old girl from Alaska in 2012, is ultimately what led to his arrest. So after Samantha was kidnapped, abducted by Keys, he actually demanded ransom money from her parents. The police were able to track withdrawals from the accounts moving throughout the
Yeah.
US. Exactly. So they eventually located him. They located him in Texas. So Texas Highway Patrol and a Texas Ranger. Um,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
no, once again, the fact that there's no rhyme reason to his locations, Vermont, Alaska, and when he asked for money, he was in Texas.
Yep.
Okay.
Because he kept traveling. He kept moving to avoid detection, to whatever
Yeah.
the reason may have been. But yeah, he was actually at a cafe in Texas when he was arrested on the morning of March 13th, 2012.
Mm.
Um, there was a big search for him. They knew he was traveling, so there was like huge like bulletins. There was warnings sent
Did they
out.
have his picture?
I think they did have a picture
Okay.
at this point, right? They
So they
searched one
knew
up.
who
They
they were
had
looking
like
for.
I believe so,
Okay.
yeah. Um, or at the very least, they had like his car that he was traveling in,
Got it. Okay.
and so that helped out a whole lot. Um, so I think the police actually did a really good job with this. There were all these other murders that happened, but after this abduction happened, and and Keys got a little sloppy with his ransom demands, the police actually got on it. So I mentioned, they knew his car, so there was lots of bulletins, postings, and so all like local law enforcement everywhere
Yeah.
were just monitoring different hotel parking lots and all of that. Um, they were able to locate him in his car. They pulled him over. They found some evidence in his car, but um, the thing that they found that really meant the most was Samantha, the girl he abducted. Her ATM card and her phone were in the car. So
So there was evidence to tie him directly to her.
yeah,
Okay.
there was. And so because of this, they got him into custody. They shipped him back to Alaska
Good.
because that's where
The
it
crime took
happened,
place.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and he initially actually was only charged with fraud because what he claimed was that the card and whatnot was just tossed into his car, and
Okay.
that's how it ended up there. So he was only charged with fraud because they really didn't have full evidence. It was just circumstantial,
Mm-hmm.
right? How could they actually place him?
Yeah.
Um, what they didn't expect was um, for Keys to confess to the murder.
Oh. Okay. So they were tracking him on a charge of like fraud, not murder.
Mm-hmm. No, because
Oh.
they only had circumstantial evidence. Because just because you're in possession of uh, a card and a phone doesn't mean that you killed
Yeah,
somebody,
but the
right?
fact that he
And that's
confessed.
that's probably what the defender tried to argue, the public defender.
Yeah.
But yeah, he eventually confessed. He was indicted. His trial was supposed to happen in March of 2013. Um, now, while he was awaiting trial, he was an incarcerated. He was interviewed a lot of times, like I mentioned, and there's a lot of those interviews online. Um, I did watch a bit of them. He actually seemed to be like semi-friendly to the investigators. He cooperated pretty well. Like in one of the interviews, it starts off like in his orange jumpsuit. He's sitting in the office, and the video starts with like an investigator like saying something to him and then leaving,
Hmm.
and he's just sat in the room alone for almost 15 minutes because they're gonna make him wait, right? And he's just like waiting around the whole time, like all whatever. And then as soon as an investigator comes in 15 minutes later, he's like, hey. And like the investigator is like, ah, rough night. And they're just like semi joking with each other, just
Yeah.
talking about like um keys he mentioned, something about like waking up and seeing those late night ads of like the electric shock things you put on your stomach to give you abs.
Okay. This
So
was
like
2012.
random banter conversation, which I thought was kind of insane
Yeah.
because this man murdered this girl.
So at this point, it's he had already confessed or he was about to confess.
At this point, he had already
Okay.
confessed. Yeah.
That's so
So
strange.
he confessed to the murder of Samantha. He confessed to some of his other crimes, other robberies, thefts he was involved in. And eventually, he confessed to the murders of the husband and wife once again, Bill and Lorraine. Now, um, let's see. He, the police kind of kept the investigation under wraps for a lot of it. They refused to release a lot of the surveillance footage of Samantha's abduction, of coverage. Um, Eventually, he stopped cooperating because the media finally got a hold of it. And the reason why he, really stopped cooperating was because of his daughter.
He had a daughter.
He did have a daughter. After the army, when he moved to Washington, he met a woman and he had a child with her. And he actually said himself he never targeted children or the parents of children because he never wanted his daughter to be in fear or figure out who he was.
Um,
The
that
the
18 year
investigators did
old
not
was
believe
someone's
that.
child.
Yeah. The investigators were like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, you're just saying that.
Yeah.
But that's why he stopped cooperating eventually.
Interesting.
He got through his trial. He was then being held after he was sentenced. He was actually held at the Anchorage Correctional Complex in Anchorage, Alaska. It's a state prison
Hmm.
there. And that's where he did spend a good chunk of his sentence. Not his entire sentence.
How?
And I'll get back
Okay.
into that
Fair.
in just a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were the two. There were before I talk about what was found after he was locked up, after all of that happened, I want to go into just a bit into his confessed victims, Bill, Lorraine, Samantha.
Hmm.
So first we'll start with Samantha because that's what led to his arrest in the first place. She was kidnapped from a coffee booth that she worked at on February 1st, 2012. Keys took her credit card, a lot of her belongings, sexually assaulted her, and then killed her the following day. So this was Alaska, right?
Yeah.
But he was caught in Texas. Well, that's because he just dumped her body. He went to New Orleans, and then from New Orleans, he got on a 2-week cruise to the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay.
So he just started traveling.
Also,
he eventually, yeah.
Where did this man get this money to do all this traveling?
So he started working pretty young. When he was young, he actually got really good at carpentry.
Okay.
So he worked in like at a construction company in like when he was 16 and 17, and so he just had worked. But also he probably got a lot from the army,
Yeah.
right? So
Okay.
yeah, um,
Yeah, he went on a cruise, we said, to the Gulf of
yeah.
Mexico.
Eventually, he came back to Alaska. He dismembered Samantha's body, disposed of it at a lake. Um,
So there was a
Eventually, her
2 week
remains.
gap where like her body was just sitting out there in the cold. And then he
Hmm.
came back.
Hmm. But it was like perfectly preserved because it's
Yeah,
Alaska,
yeah, but at the
right?
same time I'm like, why would you come back to the scene of the crime?
He he like he hid it in a shed in his backyard.
Uh-huh.
So I guess it was his house, right? And they didn't
Oh,
think
yeah, like it was
to look,
connected
so
to him.
it was already there.
Fair.
Anyway, yeah. So there was that. The couple in Vermont. Um, it was the night of June 8th, 2011, when he broke into their house, tied them up, drove them to an abandoned farmhouse, shot Bill, sexually assaulted, and then strangled Lorraine.
Okay.
And still to this day, their bodies have never been found.
No.
No.
I'm just thinking of
I
that
mentioned
situation.
I mentioned earlier how he planned his
Yeah.
crimes, right? They weren't just out of the way. So in order to for him to complete for him to murder Bill and Lorraine, 2 years prior to it, so in 2009, he actually hid a murder kit near their house. And then he recovered it and he used it to kill Bill and Lorraine. And then he took the murder kit and then he moved it to New York. And that's where he left it, planning to use it again in the future.
Do you know what was in the murder kit?
No clue. It's just a murder kit, probably like a knife, maybe a gun, maybe some like rope or something
Okay,
to
yeah,
strangle,
okay.
gloves, stuff like that.
No, that's
So that's like a look into his, I guess, sort of psyche of what he did. To add on to that, when investigators searched his home, they found tons of books about murder, um, serial killers, other things like that. He studied, FBI profiling,
as you say
those
that, I'm
types of
looking at my
things.
bookshelf and I'm like, yep.
Yep.
Same here, but not for the same reason.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
No.
Um, he idolized Ted Bundy, right?
Okay.
He felt he was super
So
similar
he
to
really
him.
idolized this people.
He even went as far as recreating Ted Bundy's attempt at escaping court. So when he was in trial, he in 2012 he tried to get up and escape, but then the guards tased him.
Good. Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
This man. Unbelievable.
Anyway, he was charged, convicted for the murder of Samantha. I believe for Bill and Lorraine as well. He was held in the Anchorage Correctional Complex, like I said, and everyone kind of thought that was the end of it. There was always this feeling that he had more victims that he wasn't letting on about, but
Yeah.
there was never anything to suggest it. Really, there was never anything.
Like he only confessed to the ones that they were aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I see that.
Something else I said was that he only served part of his sentence.
Yeah, yeah. Care to elaborate?
Yeah. That's because on December 2nd, 2012, he actually committed suicide inside of his jail cell. He brought in a razor that he had concealed, which nobody knows how he got it because he was under strict security.
Mm-hmm.
He actually attempted to strangle himself
Before that.
but that didn't. No, like to kill himself, but that didn't really work out,
Okay.
so he cut his wrists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, everyone was like, "Holy shit! Like what?" Um, but when they searched the cell, they found a suicide note under the bed, or under his body. Sorry.
Okay.
Um, it was a message. It was an ode to murder, quote, as it was called. Um, but nothing else. Um, a
So,
lot of time went by.
how
Yeah.
long did he serve before he committed suicide?
Um,
Do you know?
like 6 months, barely.
Okay, and what was he sentenced to? Do you know?
I'm not entirely
Okay,
sure now.
because
Um,
the anytime that someone gets caught for murder or anything, and then they commit suicide in jail, I'm like, no, no, like you need to like serve your time.
this is true. Everyone thought that was the end of it. Once more, he killed himself. Um, but in 2020, pretty recently,
Where's this
the
going?
the FBI actually released something that to the public. They released something they found in his cell. It was a drawing, a drawing painted in his own blood underneath his bed in his cell. And this was the drawing of 11 skulls surrounding a pentagram.
Did he have 11 victims?
That's exactly what the investigators believe. But there's no way to prove it.
And they only know of
They've
3.
never been able to. They only know of 3. There is a list of lots of suspected
Mm-hmm.
possible victims that they think, and I'll go through them. Um, they always thought he murdered more people because he always sort of hinted at it, but he never gave them
It's
anything.
almost like I'm not going to tell you unless you know the like I know you think I murdered more people. You're right, but I'm not going to tell you until you
I'm not gonna
name.
tell
I'm
you.
not going to tell
Yeah,
you unless you name them. Type of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's probably what it was. Something like that. Who knows? Um. Anyway, um, from earliest, I guess, to more recent. Um, I think one of his first victim could have been a 12-year-old girl named Julie Marie Harris. She disappeared on March 2nd of 1996 in Colville, Washington, where he grew up. So Keyes grew up in Colville.
What year was this?
Her 1996. So he was still living
Oh,
then.
so she would have been like one of the very first ones.
This is likely believed to be his first victim, yeah.
Okay.
Her body was found a year later, April 26, 1997, in the woods, a while away. Um, he Keyes actually was questioned by the authorities because he just lived in the area, but nothing was ever confirmed nor denied, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another 12-year-old girl from Colville as well. Her name was Cassandra Emerson. She was reported missing after the body of her mom was discovered. Her mom's name was Marlene K. Emerson,
Mm-hmm.
and those remains were discovered on June 27th, 1997, so like about a year after the first girl. Um, so Marlene was sort of the second victim, would have been, I guess, and then Cassie would have been the third because her remains were found in 1998. One thing that the reason they really strongly believe this is tied to him is because in some of their questioning, Keyes actually did admit that his first arson was a trailer in Colville. And that's
Got it.
exactly where these remains were, this burned down trailer,
Yeah.
right? So there's that connection. Um, Keyes did actually admit that he killed 5 people in Washington State, but um, they could never find anything.
Hmm.
Lots of the so between 2001 2005 is when they believe these all have happened. Um, Keyes said he beat a man to death. He strangled a woman. Um, in 2012, they identified one lady who could have been a possible victim of his. Her name was. They didn't actually know her, so of course they called her Jane Doe, right?
Yeah.
Lewis County Jane Doe. Um, so actually, they called her Jane Doe. They didn't really know, but that is one of the victims. Um, 5 in Washington State, so like I mentioned. Then Keyes also confessed to one murder in New York. Um, and then also he's a suspect in 3 murders in Florida. Um, so all around, like I mentioned.
Yeah. There's no consistency. It's just random.
Yeah. Another lady, a 48-year-old woman named Deborah Feldman, um, and also a 58-year-old man named James Lamar Tidwell Jr. Um, James disappeared in Texas. The lady before this, Deborah, she disappeared in New Jersey. So it was so random,
Yeah.
and they could never be found.
S-
But they do think
It's
that these could possibly be his 11
yeah,
victims.
it's what makes it difficult to because there was no consistency, there was no MO, there was nothing. Yeah.
Anyway, um, I'm not sure if this is still like something that's being investigated. I doubt it like actively is. It's probably sort of a cold case with the FBI and whatnot. But um, that's the serial killer case of Israel Keys.
Yeah.
Some of his backstory, a look into what he did, um, and I hope that all of those families are able to one day get some closure.
Same. Especially the ones that just don't have answers.
Yeah,
Wow. Thank you.
welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that they might be cold cases until like some new evidence shows up, either tying
Yeah.
him to Keys or to someone else. But yeah. How
All
many
right. What do
documentaries did
you
you
have
have to
for
watch about
us,
this man?
Jed? I actually didn't watch any documentaries. It was just lots of articles,
Fair.
and then looking through some of his interviews
Okay.
as well.
Nice. Well, let's move on from this
Oh, serial
um,
murder.
monster, this son of a gun, um,
Yeah.
and let's switch to the paranormal.
Okay. Sounds good.
Now, um, we're going to a state that you've already mentioned.
I
um,
mentioned a lot.
yeah, you mentioned a lot. Yeah, we're gonna start off in Texas,
Okay.
um, but it kind of evolves, and we'll get into it. Um,
Okay.
we're gonna start off in Texas, and we're gonna meet Brian Bethel.
Brian Bethel.
Now, Brian Bethel, he is just a journalist. He's based in Abilene, Texas.
Okay.
And he's known for his work with the Abilene Reporter News. He's still, last I checked, he's still alive. He's still a journalist. Um, and there's a little bit of overlap between your case and my case when it comes to the years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the year is 1996.
Got it.
Um, and Brian would come across something that would change him um, for the rest of his life. But he wouldn't report on it until 2 years later. Um,
Weird. Okay.
so it was actually 1998, which I think it's when he left his family.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. So like I was like,
Yeah.
there's some like overlaps there, here and there.
There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and he he posted something on like a online thread, a chain mail, which is what they had in 1998. And I was able to track down. I don't know if this is like the original or like someone copied pasted it, but I was able to find what he wrote.
Oh, that's
So I'll
cool.
read it back to you. I took out the things that were not really relevant to this, so it's a little shorter than it was than when I read. But this was the title on this chain link or whatever it was. It's called "Evil Kids,"
Okay.
um, and he posted this on Friday, January 16th, 1998, at 7:12. And it says from Brian Bethel, and then it has this email. Um, and then it says to, which is ghosts dash discuss at lindo.com. Um, and
Okay.
then the subject, those darn black eyed kids.
What?
Have you ever heard of the black eyed kids?
No.
Well, you're about to hear about them now.
Okay, I'm excited but creeped out.
Fair. Um,
Go for it.
that is the right mood to have for this. So yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
you're really quiet
Oh
now.
no,
Did I think your mic might have unplugged or something?
am I good? Okay,
Wait, speak again.
how's this?
Okay, now you're like a. Wait, speak again.
How's this?
Okay, that's good.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure what happened, but we're good. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Yeah, listeners,
Yeah.
you're getting the raw footage right here.
Woo! We're the best podcasters.
Yeah, fixing the technical issues on on yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Live.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Um so I'm going to read what he wrote on the thread. I'll take a pause here and
Okay.
there so you can like chime in. Um
Okay.
so he started by saying, as so many things do, it all started out innocently. It was about 9:30 p.m. when I left from my relatively isolated apartments. It's about 10 to 15 minutes or so to downtown. Abilene has a population of about 110,000 people. Right next to Camelot Communications' old location, there is a $1.50 movie theater. At the time,
Cool.
yeah, at the time, the place was featuring the masterwork of modern film, Mortal Kombat.
Okay. Love the game. I don't know about the movies,
1998.
but
It says,
okay.
I drove
So
to the theater on the way into the center proper and pulled into an empty parking space. Using the glow of the marquee to write out my check, I was startled to hear a knock on the driver's side window of my car. I looked over and I saw two children staring at me from the street. I need to describe them with one feature, you can guess what it was, that I didn't realize until halfway through the conversation cleverly omitted. Both appeared to be in that semi mystical stage of life children get into where you can't exactly tell their age. Both
okay.
boys, at my initial impression, is that they were somewhere between 10 and 14 years old. Boy
Okay.
number one was the spokesman. Boy number two didn't speak during the entire conversation, at least not in words.
Huh?
Yeah. And it continues by saying, boy number one was slightly taller than his companion, wearing a pullover hooded shirt with a sort of gray checkered pattern on the jeans. I couldn't see his shoes. His skin was olive colored and had curly, medium length brown hair. He exuded an air of quiet confidence. Boy number two had pale skin with a trace of freckles. His primary characteristics seemed to be looking around nervously. He was dressed in a similar manner to his companion, but over his pullover was a light green color. His hair was a
Okay.
sort of pale orange. They didn't appear to be related, at least directly. Oh, great, I thought. They're gonna hit me up for money, and then the air changed. I've explained this before, but for the benefit of any new lurkers out there, right before I experience something strange, there's a change in perception that comes about, which I describe as the manner above. It's basically enough time to know it's too late. So there I was, filling out my check in my car, which was still running at the time, and in a sudden panic over the appearance of two little boys, I was confused. But an overwhelming
Yeah.
sense of fear and unearthliness rushed nonetheless. Boy number one smiled at the sight for some inexplicable reason, and it just chilled my blood.
Okay.
I could feel a fight or flight response kicking in. Something I knew instinctively was not right, but I didn't know what it could possibly be. I rolled down my window very, very slightly and asked, "Yes?" Boy number one smiled again, broader this time. His teeth were very, very white. "Hey, mister, what's up? We have a problem," he said. His voice was that of a young man, but in his diction, calm, quite calm, and something I couldn't put my finger on, made my desire to flee even greater. "You see, my friend and I want to see the films, but we forgot our money," he continued. "We need to go to our house to get it. Want to help us out?"
No.
Okay. Journalists are
No.
required to talk to lots of people, and that includes children. I've spoken to lots of them. Here's how it usually goes. Mister, can I see that camera? I won't break it or anything. I promise. My dad has a camera, and he lets me hold it sometimes. I guess. And I took a picture of my dog. It wasn't very good because my finger got in the way, and something like that. It's the interaction that he normally has with children. And in some feet, and there's some feet shuffling and the body swaying. You got a typical kid talking to a stranger. In short, they're usually very apologetic. People generally teach children when they talk to adults, they're usually bothering them for one reason or another, and they should at least be
Yeah.
polite.
Yeah.
This kid was in no way fitting the mold. Go ahead.
No, no, I'm just
Okay.
laughing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This kid was in no way fitting the mold. His command of language was incredible, and he showed no signs of fear. He spoke as if my help was a foregone conclusion. When he grinned, it was as if he was trying to say, "I know something, and you're not going to like it. But the only way you're going to
What?
find out is if you do what I say." Well,
What?
the bet well was the best reply I could offer to the kids. Now here's where it gets a little strange. Boy number two looked at boy number one with a mixture of confusion and guilt on his face. He seemed in some way shocked, not with his friend's like brusque manner, but that I just didn't immediately open the door for them. Boy number two eyed me nervously, and then boy number one seemed a bit perturbed too. I still was registering something wrong with both of them. "Come on, mister," boy number one said again, smooth as silk. A car salesman could learn something from this kid. Um, Now we just want to go to our house, and we're just two little boys. That really scared me. Something in
Yeah.
the tone and diction again set off an alarm. My mind was frantically trying to process what it was perceiving about the two figures that was quote unquote wrong. I was all I could manage. I felt myself digging my fingernails into the steering wheel. "What movie were you going to see?" I asked finally. "Mortal Kombat, of course," boy number one said. The silent one nodded in affirmation, standing a few paces behind. "Oh," I said. I stole a quick glance at the marquee um, and the clock in my car. Mortal Kombat had been playing for an hour, the last showing of the evening. The silent one looked increasingly
Weird.
nervous. I think he saw my glances and suspected that I might be detecting something was not above board. Come on, mister, let us in. We can't get in your car until we can't get in your car until you do, the spokesman said smoothly. Just let us in, and we'll be gone before you know it. We'll go to our mother's house. We locked eyes. To my horror, I realized my hand had swayed towards the door.
No.
Yep, which was locked, but he was like reaching for the door, and I was in the process of opening it. I pulled away, probably a bit too violently, but it did force me to look away from the children. I turned back. Uh, I offered weakly, and then my mind snapped into sharp focus. For the first time, I noticed their eyes. They were coal black, no pupils, no iris, just two staring orbs reflecting the red and white lights of the marquee. At that point, I know my expression betrayed me. The silent one had a look of horror in his face, in a combination that seemed to indicate A, the impossible had just happened, and B, we've been found out. Boy number one, on the other hand, wore a mask of anger. His eyes glittered brightly in the half light. Come on, mister, he said. We won't hurt you. Just let us in. We don't have a gun.
What?
Yep. That last statement scared the living hell out of me because at that point, by this tone of voice, he was plainly saying, we don't need a gun. He noticed my hand shoot down towards the gear shift. Boy number one's final words contain an anger that was complete and whole, and yet contain in some respect a tone of panic. We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in. I ripped the car into reverse. Thank goodness that no one was coming up behind me, and I tore out of the parking lot. I noticed the boys in my peripheral vision, and I stole a quick glance back. They were gone. The sidewalk by the theater was deserted. I drove home in a heightened state of panic. Had anyone attempted to stop me, I would have run through and faced the consequences later. I bolted into my house, scanning all around, including the sky. What did I see? Maybe nothing more than some kids looking for a ride, and some really funky contacts. Yeah, right. A friend suggested that they were vampires. What with the old let us in bit and my compelled response to open the door, and that we'll go see our mother thing. I'm still not sure that they were what they were, but here's the epilogue I find chilling. I talked to Chad a lot. He's still my best friend, my best ghost hunting companion, and an all-around cool guy. he
That's cool.
he recently moved to Amarillo, but at the time of this happening, he was still living in San Angelo of Rampage fame. I called him and I talked to him briefly. He had two female friends with him at the time, both professing some type of psychic ability. I started telling him the story, leaving out the part about the black eyes for the kicker. One of the women, we were on the speakerphone, stopped me. This children had black eyes, right? She asked. I mean, all black eyes. Yes, I said, taken a bit back. She said. One night last week, I had a dream about children with black eyes. They were outside my house wanting to be let in, but there was something wrong with them. It took me a while to realize it was their eyes. I haven't even gotten as far as them wanting to come in. What did you do? I asked. I kept the doors and windows locked, she said. I knew if they came in, they would kill me, she paused. And they would
Oh
have killed
fuck.
you too if you had let them into your car. So, the reason I had this story to share with you um, is because this is one of the first cases reported of black eyed children or black eyed kids.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Brian
And
Bethel.
where was that story from again?
So, this took place in Texas.
Okay.
Um, and Brian Bethel is the person that reported this. Now, the reason that there's so much weight behind this story is because Brian Bethel, he's a journalist, and this was
Got it.
out of the normal for him to write. Um, and even
Okay.
after this, he still continued working as a journalist. Now, there is there are typical reports for black-eyed kids. They're known as BEK, or black-eyed children. Um, they are typically reported to appear at night. They are seeking assistance, or entering to homes or vehicles, and the encounters with them are usually associated with intense feelings of fear and uneasiness. Now, this started, or at least it was first reported in Texas. Pretty soon, because this was 19, what was the year again? 1998. The internet was just a thing. Um, People all over started to report black eyed kids from Texas to the UK. Um,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
in the UK, there's
Everywhere.
witnesses that claim to see black eyed children wandering the woods. So, of course, this just led to an extensive like social media coverage and like paranormal investigations. So, black eyed children, the way that they're described, their characteristics, is that their ages range from 6 years to 16 years old. They usually have a pale or sallow skin tone. Their eyes are completely black without the scleria or iris. And usually they have outdated or unusual clothing styles. So,
Okay.
this
Weird.
encounters with children often involved just the kids asking for help, such as, "Can I use your phone? I need a ride," or just to let them in your house. So,
I would not do any of that.
good,
So,
good.
yeah.
I mean, neither was Brian until he felt compelled to like open the door for them. And then he's like,
That's
nope.
true. Glad he stopped.
Yeah.
So,
So there's a couple theories of what they might be, and we'll get into them later as well. But there's plenty of stories out there of people encountering them on the side of the road, at their
yeah.
house, or just driving by. Some people have let them in, some people have not let them in. The people that tend to let them in, um, usually they're like the day after or something, their plants start to die, or
Oh.
they're usually diagnosed with cancer or something crazy like that.
Oh shit. That's crazy.
Yeah. And the people that just turn them away, a lot of them start to like develop this fear of being in like enclosed locations. Um, so yeah, so there's
Interesting.
they became a huge sensational thing. There's a lot of movies and documentaries and like televisions where they mention them. There's a horror film called Black Eyed Kids that came out in 2012. Um,
That's cool.
it was produced with a Kickstarter funding. Um,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
Love that. Love Kickstarter.
there's documentaries, several documentaries such as Black Eyed Children, Let Me In. In television, there is a PBS series called Monstrum, and I did get to watch that episode, which was really cool how they described them. Um, there's also Don't Let Them In, the urban legend of black eyed children, which just once again analyzes the origin. Um, there's also lots of interviews out there. Many individuals have shared their personal accounts with black eyed children. There's Brian Bethel. I think there's two interviews
Mhm.
with him on YouTube about his experience with black eyed kids. There's also Lee Brickley, a UK paranormal based investigator who has documented sightings um, in the UK area as well. And once again, they all have the same commonality that like it's a young child from either 6 years to somewhere in the 16 years old. And they usually
Yeah.
come in pairs.
Okay.
It's never one child, it's usually two at a time. Now, I was able to get two shorter stories to share with you from people experiencing the Black Eyed Kids.
Okay.
Um, this one is from Reddit, from Hammerhands. Um,
Okay.
And this one just is it's just called Encounter with a Black-Eyed Kid. It starts by saying, I recently read a story about black-eyed kids. This story felt like a twisted tale of deja vu. I believed encounter a BEK, black-eyed kid. I've never mentioned this particular detail about the eyes to anyone for fear that they would think I was fabricating the story or going crazy. The incident took place about 13 years ago. So this was posted 13 years ago and it took 13 years ago, so around 1998.
God damn.
I had just moved to a new city with my wife. Uh, we were small town newlyweds from Midwest. We moved across the country to one of the bigger cities in Southwest, so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and new to the city living, I habitually answered the door without a second thought. Never again am I doing this. The first thing that should have tipped me off of this peculiarity of the situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 in the morning. The second thing,
Holy shit.
yeah, that should have dawned on me is this kid had to reach over a rather tall patio gate to unlatch it and open it. The knock at the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work, a pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken with an inexplicable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him, a teenager, average height, average build, knee uh, knee length black leather coat, short black hair, and sunglasses. The sunglasses at
Sunglasses.
6 a.m. struck me as
Yeah.
odd. Yes, yep. He was eating an
Okay.
apple
Weird.
and he was very polite. He asked if he could come in and warm up. I said no, closed the door, and slid the security chain into place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in to warm up. No, I reply and attempted to close the door. But before I could close the door shut, he put his hand out, stopping the door on its hinges. He looked directly into my eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?
What?
Yeah. Fuck
Oh,
that!
this story
I
is not
replied, a
related.
little confused. Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police. He takes a moment to let this information sink in. He lowers his glasses, revealing eyes as black as obsidian, and says, No, you won't be calling anybody. At that moment, I forced the door closed, locked it, and called out to my wife. She is scared shitless hiding in the bedroom. All jacked up on adrenaline, I ripped out the curtains to take a look through the side window. Um, he's gone. Absolutely no trace of him. I go out to the patio to check the gate. It's still latched from the inside. That was fucked up. I think to myself, as I turn and enter the house, I notice a half eaten apple lying on the ground.
Ew.
Yeah. So that's another person. See, this is a story that's just like one Black Eyed Kids. Normally they come in pairs. Um, the ketchup for the apple, I thought that was really fun. So I was like, I'm going to share this one.
Crazy.
Now, there is an author who's named Jason Ofut. He teaches journalism at Northwestern Missouri State University, and he
Okay.
has been researching black eyed children for more than 10 years.
Wow.
So
That's a
he
lot.
has interviewed plenty of people around the world who claim that they've encountered the children. And he has a quote that says, Their eyes are like a rat's eyes, just black. There's no pupil, there's no white, there's no iris, just totally black. And there is one more encounter that I will read for you. This is a more recent one compared to the previous ones. And this is an encounter from a child. So
Okay.
it says on March 7th.
Child meeting the black-eyed children.
Yes. Which I found also interesting because normally it's, I mean, at least adults are the people that report them.
Yeah.
So on March 17th, 2008, I had my one and only encounter with black eyed kids. Before my experience, I have never heard of anything having to do with black eyed kids. I was 12. I was sitting outside of a hairdresser in an old Chevy pickup waiting for my mom to get her haircut. About 15 minutes had passed when I saw some kid walking back and forth along the sidewalk in front of the parked car. At first, I thought I recognized him as one of my school friends, so I banged on the door. Uh, so I banged on the front windshield until he looked my way. It was not anyone I knew. At this point, I was not scared at all. Not yet. The boy walked over to the side of the boy walked over to the side um, of my car and just stares. I
Weird.
think um, I think to let me get a sorry, I copied and pasted this from like the Reddit.
Valid.
I think to let me get a good look at his eyes, to freak me out, let me tell you, if you have never seen a black eyed kid, you have no idea what to imagine. Pupils as black as the night sky. The boy whispers, "You must let me in." And then I lock the car doors and duck down into the space below the seats. 5 minutes later, he was gone. When my mother got into the car, she told me a boy with black eyes had come into the hairdresser and insisted for my mother to give him the keys. She refused. Thank God she did.
Good. And that's the. Thank God people are not letting these kids in.
No,
So.
like once again, these are all stories of people that have like refused to let them in. They're like, no, I'm calling the cops, or just no, walk away, something. People have let them in. People have had their plants start to die unexplicably. People have been diagnosed with things. People have started to suffer from multiple or like different types of phobias after letting them into the house. Um, so now it's where we get into some of the theories.
Okay. There's theories. That's cool.
So the most, well, I wouldn't say the most common because I don't know what the most common is, to be honest. One of the big theories out there, it's that they have extraterrestrial origins. Um, the Greys are a common depiction of like aliens and like UFO
Okay.
lore.
Yeah.
So they're described as like humanoids with um, smooth skin, black eyes, and like unsettling calmness. The black eyed kids have a similar appearance. They're just unnaturally like they have smooth skin, pale skin, featureless black eyes. So some people out there have theories that the black eyed kids are a type of a hybrid.
Oh,
Um,
like an alien human
yeah,
hybrid?
that's what their theories are.
Okay.
Because
I can see
often
that.
in like alien abduction narratives, hybrids are like children with both human and like alien DNA.
Um,
So they think that maybe black eyed kids were created through like genetic experiments. They have like the inability to like imitate human behavior and like manners that seem convincingly, but at the same time, like that they're a little incomplete at understanding like humanity because they're always so calm for like quote unquote children. A lot of the people that have interacted with black eyed kids say that it seems that the kids have like a script that has been rehearsed ahead of time and that they just like
interesting.
rephrase the questions in different
Yeah,
ways.
yeah,
They're like, can you let us in? We have to come in. Um, Things like that. Now, some of the quote unquote evidence is that eyewitnesses often report feeling a feeling of missing time or headaches or confusion, which are normally related to like UFO abduction cases.
yeah. Okay.
But the sudden appearance and disappearance of black eyed children seems to like mirror alien contact with the loss of time, headaches, and like confusion.
It does, yeah.
So that's why one of the theories is that they might be aliens or alien hybrids at least. Theory number two. Um, they're vampires or like a
What?
demonic entity. I know. The theories go all over the place. Um, so the reason people think that they're a type of vampire or like a demonic entity is because of the invitation rule. Um, One of the most significant
Oh, yeah.
clues, yeah, supporting the theory of the black eyed kids is that they have to be invited in. They're saying, "Can I come in to warm up? Can you have to let me
Like
in?
you have to say
Can you
it. You
give me a
have to.
ride to my mother's to collect my money?"
Hmm.
Um, so once again, like a home or a car without like explicit permission, they're not allowed to cross that threshold. Just like
Got
old
it.
folk vampire movies, old
Yeah, that's
folklore.
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because once again, permission could represent surrendering power and allowing like the entity and to like take
This is
control.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once again, the appearance is pale, lifeless skin, jet black eyes that align with like the description of like both demons and like vampire creatures.
And vampires. Yeah, I guess I see that.
Yep. There's also like another thing that falls under this theory. It's that they're like energy vampires because many witnesses just claim to report like dread or sick or just drained of energy following the encounters with the black eyed kids.
Energy vampires. Like they instead of draining your blood, they drain your energy
Yeah, like
or something.
they're
Like
like
what?
psychic vampires that like feed on a person's life force and like emotions and energy.
Okay.
Yeah. Because a lot of people like after talking to black eyed kids or encountering them, they feel fatigued, they feel like depressed, or they just like that lingering uneasiness. Um, yeah. And then in many religious and paranormal traditions, black eyes are a sign of demonic possession, which is why some people think that they're demons.
Yeah.
Or at least possessed by like a malevolent spirit.
No, I can see all of those theories. Yeah.
Now, theory number three. Um, they're ghosts or just spirits of lost children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the black eyed kids are just like restless spirits of like deceased children who died under like traumatic or violent
Honestly, I could
circumstances.
see that, and they're just trying to find like connection or be invited in or
Yeah,
something like
they're
that.
just unable to pass through the afterlife.
Yeah.
There's historical parallel exist with children ghosts that haunt locations who just seek companionship or help. However, for this theory, like the black eyed kids are like they're set apart because they seem to be something darker and a bit more unnatural compared to the typical ghost stories of kids.
They do.
Um, yeah. So their persistence in like asking to be let in may be tied to like spiritual barriers that they can't overcome without like human help. Um,
Something like that.
yeah. Um, there's also like connection to poltergeist because like some witnesses report strange phenomena like electronics malfunctioning, pets overreacting violently, or like objects moving after an encounter with a black-eyed kid.
Hmm.
Now, in like folklore, ghostly encounters usually happen in like haunted roads. But now, like, it seems to happen like in deserted locations, like parking lots and like rural areas, or
Yeah.
just at your house because like no one really is walking the outside of your house at night. Um,
I we both know, or like I don't know. I'm not jumping on like believing this.
yeah,
Like paranormal, blah, blah, whatever. But as far as those theories go, they are all very plausible theories. Like assuming the black-eyed children are actually real and it's an actual paranormal phenomena
yeah.
that happens.
I mean, I've never encountered a black-eyed kid. I don't want to encounter a black-eyed
I
kid.
don't want to.
Um,
No.
but assuming that, like people are encountering them, and if they had to have like a theory of what they are, this theories have like logic behind them, at least in the paranormal
They do.
aspect.
They do. Yeah, and I actually appreciate that.
Yeah.
So,
So another theory is that they're shadow people or like a manifestation of a shadow person. But unlike Black Eyed Kids, shadow people are like dark humanoid figures that, you know, often just invoke like a sense of like fear and dread. So
okay.
shadow people are typically described as dark voids or like silhouettes. Black Eyed
Mhm.
Kids, not the same. There's different variations,
No.
sizes, heights, voices, people talk to them.
I'd consider them to be more like spirits, like ghosts,
Yeah,
cuz shadow people aren't really even like people. They're just kind of like there. They blend into the shadows and stuff, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So,
I mean, some people think that the Black Eyed Kids are like an incomplete manifestation that's just like struggling to imitate human behavior,
yeah,
um,
I can see that.
which can explain why they don't look like full human. Like there's something unsettling about them and the black eyes and like the way they talk.
Mm.
And our theory, it's now where we get into the more logical, maybe quote unquote, psychological, or like it's mass hysteria.
Okay.
It's like a cultural paranoia because the Black Eyed Kids emerged during the late 20th century, gaining just like a viral momentum with the like spread of the internet and platforms like creepypasta and like Slenderman and like other urban legends.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the stories just thrive like on a mix of like shared experiences and like fear and online storytelling. So it leads to the power of
I think
suggestion.
I believe that the most.
No, honestly, it leads to the power of suggestion because once people became aware of the Black Eyed Kids, their minds became like they were primed to notice or create similar experiences. Like a normal child in like dim
Yeah,
lighting, for
like
example,
suggestion.
might appear to have
Mhm.
black eyes when viewed through like the lens of like the paranoia.
Mhm.
Um,
Or like how like earlier this year when we did the paranormal investigation,
yeah,
how we were told not to tell guests what we saw in the rooms
yeah. Once
because it
again,
would suggest to them what they could see and
yes,
stuff.
that
Yeah.
is was the next thing I was going to talk about. Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. There we go. That's the term
Yeah,
for it.
because people who believe in Black Eyed Kids are more likely to interpret encounters with strangers or children as paranormal.
Which is true.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's another theory, mass hysteria, similar to other paranormal phenomena. Black Eyed Kids encounters may just reflect a modern form of mass hysteria. People are collectively amplifying each other's fears through shared stories and experiences. Now, there is another theory that's going to take us back into the supernatural or the folklore. People think that they could be fairy folk or trickster spirits. There is a lot
That's
of
kind of
theories
cool.
out
I kind
there.
of like that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of theories.
So the Celtic folklore connection is that in traditional like Celtic and European folklore, fairies or fae folk are supernatural beings who interact with the humans in both like mischievous and like sinister purposes. So while modern depictions of fairies portray them as like whimsical and like old, wise, fairies, older lore, like the original lore, paints them as like unpredictable and dangerous. It's always like a cautionary tale.
Hmm.
So like the Black Eyed Kids maybe challenging, um, maybe changelings. Changelings are fairy imposters that were replaced, that have replaced human children. Um, so once again, that could explain why like they look like kids, but they're not full on kids. Maybe they're like a changeling. They're like an unnatural version of the original child. Uh, the black eyes in this theory is that in fairy lore, fairies' glamour or their illusion magic might fail under certain circumstances, revealing their true like inhuman nature, such as black eyes or like a void
Yeah.
like eyes. Now, there's also the invitation rule that applies to the folk theory because fairies are often bound by like rules or limitations, including
That makes
the
sense.
need for explicit consent to enter someone's home. Once again, this just mirrors like the Black Eyed Kids like persistent to be let in,
It
as
does.
their powers
It
like
really
might
does.
only work when you give them permission. And then they're tricksters in nature. Fairy and trickster spirits are often exploiting emotions to manipulate humans, appearing as a lost
Hmm.
child.
Always, yep.
Yep. It's a calculated move to trigger sympathy or like that parental instinct. So, if granted access, black eyed children might cause harm, confusion, chaos. All of those fall in line with trickster spirits who enjoy tormenting their victims.
I love all these theories.
Yeah, I mean, they
They're,
all
I don't
have,
know. There's more than I thought there was.
and they all have like solid
So
ground
that's
in
cool.
the paranormal like
They
world.
do. Yeah, like of course if you don't believe them, you're not going to believe them. But like if you actually are looking at from sort of an open mind and a logical point of view, like they actually make sense.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't believe them, it makes sense. You're going to be like, it's mass hysteria. Everyone is like confirmation bias, everyone. Another theory, which is something we haven't talked about, um, and at some point, like I would love to do a deep dive in this because there's so many things, not just the Black Eyed Kids, that fall under this category. They're called
Okay.
tulpas. So,
What?
what is a tulpa? Um, Tulpas originate from Tibetan mysticism, and they are thought to be manifestations of thought brought to life through intense concentration and belief. So modern, yeah,
Oh.
so modern paranormal circles theorize that like a shared belief, like a collective belief, can give shape to supernatural entities.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense. That's something I've thought of before, but I've never like I didn't know there was a name for
yeah,
it.
no, it's actually really cool. I was like, at some point, we'll have to like a deep dive on tulpas because
Yeah.
black eyed kids are just like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to like tulpas. Um, because the more stories you share of like black eyed kids, that more stories that
The more
circulate,
gonna show up type of
exactly, the
thing.
more
Yeah.
like powerful, the more real that they become. And the whole internet culture just fueling this collective belief is just creating a feedback loop where like the stories just strengthen the myth, contributing to like the physical manifestation of like black eyed kids.
Okay. I could see that as well, you know?
Yeah, because human fear and like attention are believed to like feed tulpas, just giving them the presence and influence. It's the digital manifestation theory, which is something that I was not aware that there was a name to it. Um, as technology connects people, collective thoughts have become easier to propagate. Black eyed kids, or like the Slender Man, may represent a digital age of tulpas. So, like
True.
myths brought to life through a shared belief. Um, and then there is two more theories to go through. Um, number 9 says that they are time travelers.
What the fuck? Okay, no. This is where you lose me.
No,
This is
fair,
where you lose
fair.
me.
I'm glad that I had you until now. um,
Like all of those I was like, okay, that's plausible. Okay, I see the vision. I respect the logic behind it.
yeah.
This one is just like, what the fuck?
No,
Like,
fair. I am completely on board with that. Everything else had some like solid ground. This ones are more of the far fetched theories.
okay.
Um, Black eyed kids often appear out of place. They're wearing outdated or strange clothing, which fuels the theories that they're time travelers from like the past or the future. Even though most stories say that they have like old clothing, not like futuristic clothing. Um,
Yeah.
So, like, their childlike forms may be an attempt to blend in, but fail because they don't fully understand the contemporary norms. It says that the black eyes might be a mutation. You know, if they're far into the future and they're coming back in time, their black eyes could reflect like an evolutionary trait, or like we adapted for some reason to have black eyes. Maybe to see like
Weird.
dim light or like radiation, or maybe we went under like genetic alterations or something like that. Um,
Yeah, this is where you lose me.
no,
I don't
I
know.
know this is a
Yeah.
far-fetched like theory. I completely agree with you. Um, the whole asking for permission might just be related to the rules or like ethical considerations surrounding time travel. So maybe like in the future, far into the future, like it's like I cannot come in unless you like explicitly give me your consent. Um, and it also has part that they're like mission orientated, like they have mission orientated behavior,
I see.
because they appear singularly focused on gaining access to a location or information. And this just aligns with theories that time travelers have like specific objectives, like gathering data or like observing historical events. Um, and their emotionless demeanor may just reflect like that detachment from our timeline, or like a lack of understanding of human emotions like during our time. And then they're like, yeah, and there's like the temporal anomalies, because people have the time
Mm,
distortion. They forget that how much time has gone by. Once again, this is one of the most out there theories.
definitely.
And then theory number 10 says that they might be, I don't know how far fetched this will be to time travelers, um, parasitic entities.
What does that mean? Like, what is a parasitic entity?
Thank
Like a
you.
demon? Like what?
Nope, we covered demons already. This
I
is
exactly. I know, but like, what would it be?
so in esoteric, yep,
Esoteric.
and paranormal traditions, some entities are believed to feed off human energy, which we kind of covered a little bit earlier, like
Yeah.
particularly emotions like fear, sadness, or anger. And the black eyed kids seem to be a sort of like parasitic entity that just takes on a childlike form, lures at victims, and then just siphons off their energy. Now, there's the whole emotional manipulation. Black eyed kids just appear as children on purpose because they exploit the human sympathy or compassion. And then,
See that? Something I can
yeah,
understand.
and like that instinctual protective urge. Once the victim opens the door, both literally and, metaphorically, the entity can drain their energy. Um, and then there's the overwhelming sense of dread that just comes with the black eyed kids. It's the body's like natural defense mechanism warning against something being wrong, against the energy like being drained or something.
Yeah.
And like I said, many people just feel that after they interact with black eyed kids, their energy is just like drained. They feel fatigue, they feel paranoia, they feel like they're being watched. All symptoms that are, consistent with like energy drain or like psychic attacks. But yeah, so those are the theories surrounding the black eyed kids. The future theory, time traveler theory, says that part of the reasons some people might have cancer, or like their plants start to die, or their animals get sick after they let the black eyed kids in, it's because if they are time
Like,
travelers, they could be contaminated with like
yeah,
radiation.
radiation and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, those are the black eyed
That kind of
kids.
fits with it. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. The black-eyed kids. Okay. Some plausible theories. Some that like you said, could have some logic to them,
Yeah.
but others that are, I'm not too sure. So
And the thing about this black eyed kids is that I don't know. They're not technically like urban legend, but they're not cryptids. It's like a merge between both.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, well, some people have seen them, but like people say that they've seen like the Sasquatch or like the Loch Ness monster. So like what do black-eyed kids fall under? Honestly,
Who knows?
both.
I
None.
was thinking like if we still had bonus episodes, this would have been or bonus
Yeah.
stories. This would have been a really good bonus story, like to cover.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, we can still go more into depth if we needed to. There's
Oh,
plenty of theories.
100%,
There's
yeah.
plenty of stories out there. Listeners, if you guys want us to cover more, just an episode of like encounters with black-eyed kids, let us know. We'll find stories. There's plenty of stories.
Yeah.
There was a ton. So like we are not short finding black-eyed kid stories. Something
All
real
right.
quick that I want to mention with the black-eyed kids.
Yeah.
There so I mentioned that Brian Bethel had the first documented encounter with a black-eyed kid.
Yeah.
There are other stories of black-eyed children from an era before the internet. I'm not sure how much I believe this, but I'll still put it out there just so you can like make your own conclusion and listeners as well. Um, the oldest story is shown in a form of a carving, a 13,500-year-old carving to be more precise.
Holy shit.
Um, it is of an Ufra man found at Göbekli Tepe, and it's depicted with obsidian eyes, just black eyes. Um, and viewers who have seen this artifact in person have often reported that it causes them to feel like unsettled. So I'm sending you the link right now so you can check that picture out, and I'll put it like on our post as well so people can check it out.
Sounds good.
And it's honestly just, it doesn't look like a child. It just looks like a person, but it doesn't have hollow eyes. There's a obsidian stone in there to give it black eyes.
Oh.
And if you scroll down, there's 2 more pictures of that statue with the obsidian stones in the eye sockets.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Once again, just something that I came across doing the research, and I was like, I
That's
don't
kinda
know how
creepy.
much I believe this, but you know,
Yeah, I don't think it really. I think it's just
it's
coincidence.
just coincidence,
Like,
to
it's
be
still
honest.
creepy. It's still creepy.
Yeah, I came across it, and I'm like, might as well mention it because I guess I read about it.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not one to give
Alright.
strangers rides, so
Oh, I'm definitely not either. So, and I plan on keeping it that way.
yeah, no,
so.
same. I'm not too worried about, you know, bump. Well, I mean, I'm not too worried about letting them into my car or into my home because I don't let strangers into my car or home.
Yeah.
But we
Like, I'm
won't.
not just gonna let some kids in because.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, you need to.
No.
You need to call your mom. What's her phone number?
Yeah. What's her phone number?
Yeah, let me
Oh,
call.
you need some money for the movies? Here you go.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not. Here's some.
Take this money.
Yeah, the movie's
Yeah.
already playing, kids. You missed it.
You want some food? Let me go grab you it, and I'll bring it back.
Yeah. Let me call the cops. They can help you find your mom, type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, listeners, let us know what you would do. And let us know what theories you believe or don't believe, or if you've had a black-eyed kid's experience of your own. Who knows?
Yep.
But
That is
other than that,
all for today.
is that it?
Yeah, I mean that was it for
Alright.
Black Eyed Kids.
Cool.
Yeah. So thank you, listeners. Like always, we'll be back next week, and
We will.
we've made it to episode 24. 2 dozens.
25. You know what's better than 24?
25.
25.
We'll be back next week for
As
that.
Patrick would say. So, yeah.
As who would
See you
say?
soon. Patrick
Oh,
or SpongeBob. Both of them. Yeah.
yeah.
Something
As
like that.
someone under the sea would say.
Anyway. Yeah. Not like Little Mermaid under the sea, but Bikini Bottom under the sea.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Cool.
see you guys later. And to wrap it all
Bye-bye.
up, Smurf. Good
Bye, guys.
night.
Thanks for listening to Chambers of the Occult. For photos, sources, and anything else mentioned during the episode, check out our website at chambersoftheoccult.com. You'll find everything you need there if you do find yourself wanting more. You can also follow us on all of our socials at Chambers of the Occult and on Twitter at COTO Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, personal anecdotes, or concerns, let us know. Fill out our contact form on our website, email us at chambersoftheoccult@gmail.com, or leave us a message on our socials. We would love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed what you heard, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. It is absolutely the best way to show your support, and it would mean the world. Until next time.